Hey, everybody, welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast presented by wonderful Pistachios. Chris Peters from FloHockey here, joined as always by Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects. And Cam, how the heck are you? It's opening day in baseball, the opening day of the NCAA men's hockey tournament. We got the CHL playoffs on the way. I mean, things are percolating, my friend. How the heck are you?
That's it. This is it, right? This is the time. We got sports on all day. I'm loving life. The birds are chirping. No, I'm having a great time. This is our time to shine, buddy. How you doing?
It really is. So we got the playoffs, the best time of the year. I really feel like the NCAA tournament, in addition to Major League Baseball's opening day, is the official kickoff of spring, whether you want to call it that or not. It is, to me, things are just starting to happen. And I get like a little bit juiced about where we're going for the rest of the season here. Obviously, we've got, pro playoffs and all that other stuff still on the horizon, still to come. But there's so much to talk about. We are going to talk a bit about the CHL playoffs today because that obviously impacts a lot of the players that we're tracking for the NHL draft. It impacts kind of where a lot of the scouts are going to be spending their time over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in college hockey, and then if we have time, we might get into a little bit of coaching prospects because they're prospects too. But we'll see kind of where we end out today. But before we get going any further, want to send a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Wonderful Pistachios. And Wonderful Pistachios, man, I'm telling you right now, get snacking and get cracking on the snack that packs a protein punch. Wonderful Pistachios, a proud supporter of this very podcast. And Cam, it is, as we said, it is one of the most exciting times around right now. But as we record this on Thursday, the following day, we are going to have a jam-packed slate of CHL league playoff games. So QMJHL, WHL, OHL, all getting cooking. There is one outstanding issue as we start the postseason, however, and the one thing that we don't have a definitive answer for yet is, will Matthew Schaefer, the projected number one pick for this year's NHL draft, be healthy enough to play for the Erie Otters in the playoffs? They open up against Saginaw Spirit. And I don't know if you all fans know this, but the other guy we've been talking about for number one a little more recently, Michael Misa, that's the team that he plays for. So it could be a dream matchup for draft purposes, but we don't know if Matthew Schaefer is going to be there. What are you thinking heading into this first round with possibly still not knowing what Matthew Schaefer's status is?
Yeah, so I did some kicking around there, some sleuthing to try to find out, and obviously nothing's definitive at this point, but I'm told that he's gone for some further testing to then clear him for contact in practice. So that first step is getting rid of that red jersey, putting on a full contact jersey, and go being a full participant in practice. Now, if all goes well, if those tests come back and say, yeah, you're good to go for contact, I expect we see him in round one. Maybe not game one, probably not game one. But if it goes, even if it, we see him in game 4 or 5 or something like that, if it goes deep into it, I do expect that we're going to see him. I think it would be a disappointment if we don't, because I have a feeling that Erie's going to have their hands full with Saginaw here. So it might be a one and done situation for him, but he's such a competitor. The youth, they heal quickly. So I'm hopeful that we do see him in round one, and I talked about this with you a little bit off air, is that what I've been really trying to find out, and I've been asking around, I've been hammering, is, if he does come back and if he's healthy and they get bounced by Saginaw in round one, does he go back to the U18s? We saw him in Finland there as an underager. He was excellent. He was my vote for one of the top defensemen of the tournament. Him and EJ Emery, I think, got my votes there last year. Hudson, I can't remember who else, but he definitely got one of my votes. And so, he doesn't have a ton to prove at that level anymore. Obviously, he's at the Holinka, he's done the World Juniors already, then to take a step back to the U18s. But let's say he only gets a game or two in the playoffs. He's probably going to want to leave the scouting community with one more look, one more glance at him. And if he goes to that U18s, he could potentially dominate for Canada. He'd obviously be their best player at that tournament. So I'm really hopeful that if that is the scenario, that we do get to see him in Frisco here in a few weeks, because we'll be down there, we'll be eating the barbecue, and I'll be hoping to be watching some more Matty Schaefer.
Yeah, and I hope so too. And I think the only thing he has to prove is just, hey, I'm back, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's no lingering issues here. I'll get back up to speed. the other question for him is how back are you? Are you able to play? I think the U18 pace would favor him. Obviously, he's played the last games he played was at the World Juniors, and you're not going to get much faster than that. So I think that's interesting. But yeah, this matchup with Saginaw, with Michael Misa on the other side, almost to me, I think kind of enhances. So what if Michael Misa starts going off in the playoffs? We already saw him have one of the best draft seasons that we've seen in 20 years in the OHL. And so are we going to see any of that competitiveness between, Matty Schaefer and Michael Misa as these two guys that, could potentially be the number one pick? It seems like they have separated a little bit more from the pack. And we're starting to even have that conversation of, is Michael Misa ready to make the jump to pro as early as next year? And when you've got a kid like Matthew Schaefer who hasn't played in a while, how willing are you going to be to see if he's going to make that jump? And I think it'd be a little bit harder of a leap for him, just with the missed time. So I think, selfishly, I obviously want to see him at the under 18 Worlds because we're both going to be there. It's a great opportunity to see these players, and certainly would have a chance to help Canada be, the favorite. But yeah, I mean, that is really one of probably the most looming questions right now. He has been skating, so he's been on the ice, he's been working his way back, but does he get that ultimate clearance? Does he get cleared for contact? Does he get the chance to play? We will have to wait and see, but that is one of the big stories of the OHL playoffs. I want to switch gears now to the WHL. The WHL has, you tweeted it out about Landon DuPont's, U16 season, obviously, for defensemen, incredible, 60 points. One of the best U17 seasons, so that includes the 16-year-olds that are in the WHL, in terms of pure production. Now, this is an exceptional status player. This is an exceptional status player as a defenseman. Those are rarer than they are for the forwards, and they are especially rare in the WHL. So as we look for forward here, Everett Silvertips are the top team by standings, by record in the WHL. That is where he plays. Before we get into their playoffs, let's just go back and look at this season. And Cam, historically, we're talking about one of the greatest seasons in WHL history for a player of his age, but really, I mean, for a rookie defenseman, period. Just general thoughts on him living up to and perhaps surpassing the hype.
I think he surpassed it. I think beyond expectations. Like you said, a 15-year-old defenseman stepping into the league, like he's a unicorn in the West, and nearly a unicorn in the entire CHL, in the history of the CHL, right? And so for him to even come in and like keep his head above water, I think would have been like a coup. It would have been impressive to say that. Instead, he looks like he's a 19-year-old out there with his calmness and his poise and his patience with the puck, his creativity, his ability to withstand some of the physical pressure of his opponents that are, up to 5 years his senior. You mentioned it. I tweeted it, blew everybody out of the water for the best U16-year-old season in CHL by a defenseman. The top mark among U17 skaters or defenders in the last 30 years in the West. Like, these are historic numbers. Like, he's setting a new bar. Like, have we seen a defenseman, not even his age, but around his age, a prospect this good in the last 20 years? Is it Scotty Niedermayer? Do we have to go back that far to get to someone of his level? So he's surpassed all my expectations this year. And what a turnaround, right? Like, Everett took him first overall, and all of a sudden now they're the number one team in the West on points. Like, yes, they lost Carter Bear, and that's going to hurt them now in the playoffs, but and Medicine Hat is rolling hard, and Calgary's got a jacked up team. So it's the WHL is still, it's up for grabs, I would say, but what he's accomplished and how he's turned that team around, helped turn that team around anyways. And I think he's a real focal point. It speaks to him as a player. It speaks to him as a person and a competitor. I'm super interested to see how his career arc goes here. Are we going to be talking about him in a couple of years? Where does he play? Or next year, where does he play his draft eligible season? Does he stick around in Everett? Right. Has he, after this year and after next year, does he have a new challenge ahead of him in the NCAA? Is he the next guy we're looking at for this discussion? Because I have a feeling we might be. But he is a very gifted individual here, and a very worthy long-term candidate here for the top pick in 2027.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2027, it feels far. And then we think about when we talked about Connor Bedard, and he was just kind of breaking onto the scene. And then now he's already in his second year of the NHL, and all these other things. And
Goes by
I also
quickly.
like yeah. I also like the stat that you provided about, teenage players in the NHL, and that Connor Bedard and Sidney Crosby are the only two to have done what?
Score 40 plus goals and get 75 plus points before turning 20 since 1990. Just Sid and Bedard. And I keep being told that Bedard's a bust. That doesn't seem like a bust company to be keeping in the NHL. Now, granted, Sid probably nearly did that whole thing in his 18-year-old season. But still, it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and Sid did. I mean, he was unbelievable,
Yeah.
in that rookie season. So, yeah. So getting back to DuPont though, and I think it is going to be interesting to see how this whole college thing does impact the whole exceptional status situation. If this young man wants to, does he want to spend 3 full years, when he's shown here? But I think there's the one thing then, and we talked about Gavin McKenna and his decision last week, and this will continue with all of these players. We will always, it is now part of the conversation. But the thing is that, when you watch Landon DuPont play, I think watching him skate, watching him operate around the ice is like one of the most soothing videos you can watch. It's like he makes it look so easy, when it's not, and he's competitive, and he's still, but the game just doesn't look very hard for him. And so that's just remarkable. And you think about too, he's kind of got an interesting developmental path because his dad played in Europe. So he spent some time playing youth hockey in Europe as well. And so, he ends up going to the CSSHL, absolutely destroys that level of hockey, gets the exceptional status, and then outperforms, a good chunk of the league in his point production this past season. So he is the guy that is the next one. We're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about Gavin McKenna a little bit later in the show, just because I think that they are just, it's so easy to get super excited about what the future of hockey looks like here, but we want to keep talking about the postseason. You mentioned it. The WHL, it does feel pretty wide open. You look at the top of the standings in the league, and you see the various teams that are there and the teams that have done well throughout the season. And obviously Everett, who we talked about, is at the top. Medicine Hat with Gavin McKenna has been very good. Calgary has been very good. Spokane has a tremendous offensive attack. Interestingly enough, I didn't realize this until I looked at the end of the season standings. There is one team in the WHL that scored 300 goals this season, and that was Gavin McKenna's Medicine Hat Tigers. Obviously a wagon, if there ever was one, a lot of talent on that team. But as we look up and down here, I mean, it's really hard to determine a true favorite in this league. I mean, who are the teams that you think have the chance to make the most amount of noise in this WHL postseason?
Man, I do think that Medicine Hat is here to play, and I think that they, whether or not they have a chip on their shoulder or not for not getting that bid to host it next year, but like once they lost that bid, like I think that the mandate in that dressing room was like, you're not going to give us one. Well, we're going to get there the hard way anyways, and we're going to get there this season. And so they have been singularly focused on doing that, and I'm sure Gavin has been leading the charge. What's really interesting too, they got Andrew Basha, they got Ryder Ritchie, but like they could have Caden Lindstrom on this team too. This team is missing Caden Lindstrom, the 4th overall pick from last year, who is just a truck, right? Like he was dominant last year as a draft eligible. So I'm just like envisioning, I just wish that he was healthy enough to get back there with Medicine Hat. I do not expect we are going to see him. He is skating with Columbus, which is really good to see. I'll be really curious to see how they handle him now down the stretch. If they try to get him into AHL games or sign or whatever, right? Like how his process is going to be, or if he's just going to stay in Columbus and skate. But I do think that the Tigers are dare I say, I think they are my favorite to come out of the West this year, even though, I do, Calgary, the Hitmen loaded up at the deadline. They are pushing all in. Everett's a really, really strong team. And then there's always some teams that kind of come in there and give up a good fight too. So like I said before, I do think the West is open, but if you're making me pick, I'm going with Medicine Hat and hitching my wagon to Gavin McKenna's horses here.
Yeah, you got Gavin McKenna on the young end, and then Oasis Wiesblatt has 103 points this year. His brother Ozzy made his NHL debut earlier this season. Ryder Ritchie having a tremendous year. Hunter St. Martin, and as you mentioned, Andrew Basha and others, and so I think it'll be interesting to see whose goalie is going to hold up. That's the other thing too. Obviously, you can get a hot goaltender, and it's a little bit tougher when you're playing against some of these teams in this league that can absolutely light it up. As we mentioned, Medicine Hat with 300 goals this year. The team that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Oh, what were you going to say there?
I just was Spokane when we're talking about teams that can rack up huge goals totals, right?
Yeah, so that's where I was going. Yeah, so like Spokane Spokane is. I mean, again, you look at Andrew Cristal's point total in Spokane, just in Spokane, 29 games, 72 points. 29 games, 72 points. That's pretty good. That's a lot.
Pretty good.
That's a lot of points. That is a lot of points. He had 60 with Kelowna before joining them, and obviously that team too, so much led by Berkeley Catton and what he's able to drive offensively. They have some talent on D. They have guys D that can push the puck up the ice really well. I think it's easy when you could just kind of send it up to one of those two guys and maybe get some points out of the deal. I think goaltending is going to be interesting for them as well. Dawson Cowan has been, good throughout the season. 905 save percentage. Obviously, when you look at the WHL save percentages, you're like, hey, anything over 900 kind of feels good right now. Let alone a 905 and things like that. But I'm fascinated by where they end up. As a team, do they have the depth to go toe to toe? Can they outscore a Medicine Hat if it comes to it? But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see that. I also think that we may be watching the last of Berkeley Catton in junior hockey. I feel like there's a good chance that he's going to push for a spot next year with Seattle. And so that's another thing I've kind of got my eyes on. But there's a lot of really intriguing series. I think if you're a draft watcher, if you're a prospect watcher, there are going to be a number of teams that you'll definitely want to keep close tabs on throughout this postseason. But yeah, the WHL, it feels like it could be anybody's year. But then again, you look at kind of those top four teams, you're like, it could be anybody's year, but I think it's going to be one of those four that ultimately makes it through. And, the WHL still, we got to, Memorial Cup, guys, are you gonna get one of those? You're gonna not, you're hosting next year, but definitely want to get, will they be a competitive team in the Memorial Cup a little bit more? We haven't talked about the Q yet, but I do want to talk about them because I'm fascinated by the top team in the Q this year. They're often one of the best teams in the QMJHL, but the Moncton Wildcats are, as of right now, far and away, coming into the playoffs, one of the best overall teams in probably in junior hockey. But you look at their record from this season and what they've done. They are they're 12 points clear of the next closest team in league standings, which is Rimouski, hosting the Memorial Cup this year. They won 53 games and lost 11, including 2 overtime losses in that total. So 53 wins, 11 losses. Obviously, a number of quality players on that roster, number of guys that have, a significant NHL future. The QMJHL is always, it can be a tricky postseason as well. Any thoughts on the Q in terms of what you're seeing and what maybe the outcome will be? Obviously, Rimouski knows where they're playing in May, but everybody else is fighting for it right now.
Yes, I imagine we will see Rimouski and Moncton in Rimouski there in May. can we just take a second and talk about Gardner McDougall? Like this guy,
We should. I love it. I love it.
this
We're going.
guy,
Yeah.
hey, he is just the best. Not only is he just a lovely man, like I could sit and listen to him speak for hours on end and not get tired of it. Like he is so intelligent and poignant and just like thoughtful with his words and his time. I love this guy. I love him as a human. But also, everything he touches turns to gold, quite literally. He's got the U18 gold. He was the interim coach of St. John's a few years ago, got himself a Mem Cup. How many U Sports championships does this guy have? Like 1,000 with New Brunswick? Like he did year after year after year, right? Like he almost went like 2 years without losing a game. Now he rattles off a nice casual 53-9-2 record, a 15-game heater to end the season, right? Like he is just and I am too, talking about David Carle and finding the young blood and moving him into the NHL. Let's get Gardner McDougall rolling in it for an NHL job here soon. That's my new mandate, I think. I think I'm on the Gardner McDougall train. And if anybody hires him, that becomes my new favorite team. Because he is, like I said, he's a great person and obviously a tremendous coach and just has a way of interacting with his players and getting the most out of them. And one of those players is Caleb Desharnais, who, a top draft pick who led that team in scoring by a healthy amount too, right? Like I think he was at least 15 points up on second place, Pekarsik. So, what he's done there with a player who his draft stock has only continually risen throughout the season. And if you ask him, I'm sure, McDougall's played a part in that too. So Moncton is an absolute wagon. I do think they're coming out of the queue, and Rimouski will just get there by there as the host team. And it's always funny, like the queue kind of gets slept on a little bit, and then they go out and they just win Mem Cups. They win them more than anybody else traditionally here too. So I do think that Moncton's going to have a good run. And Rimouski's a good team too. Like, don't get me wrong. I think they rattled off 46 or 47 wins here too as the host team. So they're doing it right. So I think the West and whoever comes out of the O, whether that's London or if it's Saginaw going for a repeat or whoever, Brantford, they're going to have their hands full with some of those teams out in the East.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, and Gardner McDougall, all he does is win. He wins and he wins and he wins. And yet here we are, and he's, I mean, the other thing too, so he's at the University of New Brunswick, as you mentioned, he won all those U Sports championships and is 65 years old. He could, it's like, hey man, let's ride off into the sunset. No. And I think it took some doing for Moncton to get him to come. And I think that they saw the value and made an offer he couldn't refuse, and here he is. And so can you imagine that, being that career shift at 65 years old, and whether or not he has aspirations to go beyond that. There's just no question that there's something special about Gardner McDougall, who's one of the best coaches one of the best coaches in college hockey in Canada, and now in junior hockey. So pretty impressive to watch, but I agree with you. I think Moncton it feels predestined. We also, Gardner did stop in and help St. John win a Memorial Cup one year too. So it's just kind of, hey, you guys need a new coach? Sure. I'll come just for the Memorial Cup and we'll go ahead and win the thing. Just a lot of fun there. Before we get off of the CHL, we talked a little bit about the first round of the OHL, but not as much about the top of it. Obviously, again, London is the top team in terms of record. They certainly have the depth. They certainly have a team that looks like they are loaded for bear for another OHL title. But, you mentioned Brantford. I mean, what do you think of teams that have the potential to maybe knock London off the pedestal here? Or is it even possible to do that with how deep they are this season?
I mean, anything can happen in these series, right? Like Kitchener's a good team, Barrie's a good team, Brantford's a good team. Like these are all 45 win type teams, 40 plus win team. Windsor, have rattled off 45 wins. So there are teams out there. Saginaw only have 38 themselves, right? Like, but they're the defending champs. They got Michael Misa, they got Epperson. They got some players that I really like a lot too. But I wouldn't say Saginaw is a favorite. I think London is clearly the favorite. What did they get? 55 wins this season? Like whatever their record was, it was a lot of wins. I do expect, 55, there you go. I do like Brantford. I do like Brantford. I think that that's a really interesting team. But if we're handicapping it, this is London's turn. They came up painfully close from taking down the title last year. It's difficult to root for London, and maybe this is just me, but they've got a bit of the Yankees feel to them, right? Where it's like, it's team players will just go to London, right? They'll be like, don't draft me, I'm going to go play in London, or draft me, but you better trade me to London because that's the only place I want to play. And so they get all these really good players that way, and so they don't have to earn it like some of these other guys. So I do have a hard time rooting for them. Sorry to Sam Dickinson and company there. So I wouldn't be heartbroken if I did see him get bounced, but I do expect that they are going to probably cruise through the OHL this year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at London, their entire decor is 6 foot or taller, and many of them
boys.
6'2" or taller. Jared Woolley, who just signed his first pro contract, is one of those guys. They have 4 defensemen on NHL contracts, all of whom have been drafted. They have a number of other players, and then you look at the guys that have been there, and Denver Barkey and Easton Cowan, and they added Blake Montgomery from the USHL this year. He's been a real solid presence for them. They have imports Jesse Nurmi and Kasper Haltunen. Sam O'Reilly, another first round draft pick. I mean, they are dripping in picks, as they so often are. And obviously Sam Dickinson being and Oliver Blanc being 2 real prominent players. They're going to be a tough team to beat for sure. But as you mentioned, I mean, the playoffs can be weird. Things can happen. You can get them on the bad day and win a series, because you need to have a couple of bad days to win a series. But it isn't outside the realm of possibility. Before we move away from junior hockey entirely on this too, the USHL, their regular season still going on. That ends April 12th. Their playoff format, best of 3, and then it goes to best of 5 the rest of the way there, as we kind of get things wrapped up. But what's interesting about the USHL right now is that their regular season title is still very much up for grabs. Very tight at the top of the standings. Right now, Lincoln is in first place. They've had a really tremendous season. There's a lot of interesting players that will be part of that race. Dubuque has had a very good team this year. Youngstown and others have had, some teams have been up and down a little bit, but, teams like Dubuque, Muskegon, really interesting teams. I think that this year's USHL postseason, especially with the format adjusted as it has been, and it may not be best of 7s, but these best of 5s as opposed to multiple best of 3 series, is really going to benefit the players as well. So I think there's a lot to look forward to in the USHL as the postseason comes here. A lot of teams that have real postseason aspirations, and certainly that's another one where it just feels like anybody can win it. And a lot of teams did a lot of movement this year to try and load up for those. But there will be a number of draft prospects. We'll talk a little bit more about that league as we get closer to the postseason. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that. And then junior A hockey in Canada, with many, many leagues either starting or about to start their postseason. And many of those leagues, of course, brought to you on FloHockey. So lots to come on that front. But as we record today, the NCAA tournament has begun, Cam, and there has been quite a bit of news coming down from the college hockey ranks. And the first one, and I don't know that you necessarily yourself will get into the coaching carousel of college hockey, because it doesn't move very often, to be honest with you. But the earth-shattering news in college hockey this week was that Brad Berry, the head coach of the University of North Dakota, was relieved of his duties. I believe he still had 1 year remaining on his contract. And this is one of the blue blood programs. They just won 21 games this year. They did miss the NCAA tournament. The standards are so impossibly high at North Dakota, where even when Dave Haxtell was there and was going to the Frozen Four almost every year and losing at the Frozen Four, there were fans that wanted him fired for that. Brad Berry had won a national championship in season 1 there, so he got him over the hump. Brock Besser, Jordan, Nick Schmaltz, that was a wagon of season. Drake Kajula, just so many, just awesome players. But they let him go. And now what's interesting is North Dakota blue blood program. That's where a lot of top end talent goes. the transfer portal's opening up. And
Mhm.
so timing wise, this is going to be tricky as well. As somebody, I know like you're not as maybe immersed in the college game as I am, but this one was noticed not just in the college ranks, but in the NHL ranks and everywhere. I think a lot of people are paying attention to this job. It's one of the best jobs in the country.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that there will be no shortage of interested parties to take over that job, right? Like ND, NODAC, it's like you say, historic program, excellent history, well funded, right? They state of the art, everything. Excellent college campus, huge hockey city, hockey town there. So there'll be a number of coaches, and it is surprising, right? Because often we see at these programs where you get a good coach like a Brad Berry or something like that, and he is there for 10 years. He could be there for 25 years, right? Like it's not outrageous to see coaches just spend nearly their entire career at a good program because everything fits and they keep getting them over the hump into the Frozen Four or whatever. And so, it was shocking to see. Of course, not making it into the dance that's kind of the bare minimum. And obviously, the higher ups felt like a change was needed, a new voice in there. And so, there's going to it would be really interesting to see who gets that job, because they're going to have a tall order in front of them too, is that those expectations aren't coming down just because there's a new bench boss next season.
Yeah, no, if nothing else, the expectation is going to be, we'll just do what Brad Berry did and win his national championship in the first year. The one thing, like on a personal note, I think Brad Berry's a really good guy and a really good coach. I think that he's developed a ton of NHL players. The one thing that I did see from some alumni that was interesting to me was that a lot of them felt like North Dakota has kind of gotten away from their identity. They've gotten a little bit smaller. They've gotten a little more skilled. But those teams that have won in the past for them have been heavy teams. I've always said that, especially in the Hackstall years, North Dakota played NHL style hockey. They played Stanley Cup playoff style hockey for a good chunk of the season. It was physical. It was fast. It was in your face. It was intimidating. And I think that was something that some alumni felt maybe got lost a little bit. I still think that they are not, like, they got rid of a coach that is going to be difficult to replace. Very popular with the players. I think that the transfer portal is going to have a number of North Dakota players in it. However, their advantage is that they are North Dakota. They are one of the best programs in the country. They are the place that so many players want to play. They have, Sasha Boisvert, who is, their most important recruit last season, him along with EJ Emery. Those are two guys. If they can retain those guys, you've got a bit of a core there. You've got something to build around. I think that the transfer portal has been, they've been a very popular spot for players within the portal to come there. They built some really nice players over the last couple of years. We just saw one of them, Cam McDonald, get an NHL deal with Columbus here yesterday. So, they'll continue to be a top program, but a job like that is, and if you're North Dakota and the timing and everything else is kind of hard, you have to get this right. I think in terms of the next hire, there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of people circling kind of Dane Jackson, who's now the interim head coach, as a guy that could potentially take the full-time job. Similar, Brad Berry was an associate coach, comes in, gets the head coaching job. But to me, it's going to be very interesting to watch, because I think the Sharks are already circling in terms of getting players to enter the transfer portal, and they have a ton of high-end prospects that are there. But that was earth-shattering news. And Brad Schlossman, who's been on the previous version of our podcast on FloHockey and is one of the great college hockey reporters, really looking to follow what he does with this, because it is probably one of the biggest stories in college hockey in the offseason. And I cannot wait to see what that looks like if they try to poach somebody. The NCAA tournament is starting just now, so it's really, really challenging to see what comes next. But also wanted to quickly take a couple of other notes. Last time we recorded, we did not have the full NCAA tournament field. As we're recording, the tournament is already underway, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that. I did want to, we did know that Boston College was going to be the number one seed. It was pretty much guaranteed at that point. They are the number one seed. And there is that possibility for a collision course. We talked about them last week between Trey Augustine and Jacob Fowler to be the two goalies left standing. Like if they're going to meet, the soonest they can meet is in the national championship game. And that is Michigan State and Boston College. can you like I mean, with all due respect to all of the other teams that I think are all, deserving, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the tournament shakes out. I mean, Cam, could it possibly get better than that if it's a BC Michigan State final? I mean, that's got everything.
Oh, sign me up. Yes, please. But like Michigan State, like that's a nasty side of the bracket they're hanging out in, right? Like they got Cornell, and then they got to face the winner of BU and Ohio State. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it take a double OT for Michigan State to knock off Ohio there last week or the weekend before, whatever it was now? Right. And I just pulled up the scores here. We're in the first, and Ohio State's up 1-0 on BU. I did predict Ohio State would knock them off here. And then all eyes will be on Tom Wielander and the Canucks. Which I was reporting there. That sounds like contract negotiations are starting to ramp up for him. Really interested to see. I guess there's a bit of a negotiation going on between burning off the year of the ELC versus the Schedule A bonuses. So we'll see which side kind of wins there. If it's Schedule B and burn a year, if it's Schedule A and he goes to the AHL, or how the Canucks feel down the stretch if they got a chance to make the playoffs. But back to that bracket, like that is no easy road, right? Cornell, and then say it's Ohio State to get out of there. That's then to have a date with Maine, like it's a tough road for Michigan State, I would say, but they are a very, very good team. So yeah, sign me up for a BC Michigan State final. But there's a whole bunch of good teams in this tournament. Like I'm excited. I love hanging out with you here, but I'm excited to wrap this up so I can get it up on the TV and we can start watching some of these games too, right? Like I
feel the same exact way, my friend. It's like I've got one eye on that, and I'm like, let's go, because this is the ultimate couch weekend. It is my favorite weekend to just kind of plop down and not move. But yeah, I actually have to move a lot this weekend, so I'll be watching a lot of these games on my phone. But I will. The regional weekend is one where it's just like I will if I'm not watching it live, I will still get every second of every game on, because it's all right there for the taking. But yes, I think BC, if there is a say that again.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm the same as you. My kid's got an out of town tournament. He got called up to play with, and I gotta be out. So I'm not coaching though, which is nice. So I'm just gonna be watching his game there and my and NC tournament on the phone or on the laptop or whatever in the stands, and it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so looking forward to all of that. But yeah, I mean, and I think Western Michigan is another team that is a legitimate threat. We actually have all three of the last three goalies that played for Team USA at the World Juniors in the bracket, in the chance for the national championship. I think Pat Ferschweiler's done a tremendous job with Western Michigan. But yeah, I mean, there are some real tricky games out here in the first round. Upsets can and will happen. And no one is safe, not even mighty BC. So we will see where it all ends up, but that is going to be exciting. Also wanted to make a quick note about some of the college free agents. And the big one to me that has been the guy with the highest offensive upside probably of the college free agents this year was Jack Williams from Northeastern. He did sign with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus has been very aggressive on the college free agent front for the last couple of years. They have managed to get some of those players. I think Jack Williams has a chance to play some NHL games. He has some really good skill level. I think the hockey sense is pretty high. He's got decent enough size. He, he's not big, but he can be sturdy. He's got some real good puck skills. So I think I think the top prize in the college free agent market, based on everything I'm hearing, is Carson Dorwart from Michigan State. But that's the guy that I think a lot of teams feel there's a legitimate NHL role to be carved out. But if you're looking at upside of a guy that could potentially be beyond that, I think Jack Williams is a really good signing for Columbus, and I think that's one of those ones where you're feeling pretty happy about it. So, but yeah, so beyond that, I mean, yeah, this is just the best couch weekend, and now you and I have to go coach youth hockey and try to watch two games at once, which is a skill, but I think we both possess it. It wouldn't be the first time.
And our wives think we can't multitask. Eh?
Exactly.
Look at us. Look at us.
I care about, no problem. So, we're going to roll through this next one really quickly because I do want to touch on it, because we both, there's been movement in the coaching industry, we talked about Brad Berry. That's at the college level. But as we record this, this is the day that John Tortorella was fired from the Philadelphia Flyers. That is a premium job opening up. I think any NHL job is a premium job, but certainly there's those bigger market teams and teams with the history that Philly has are going to be a big deal. And it's also where do they go next in their next stage of development? Chicago is another one where I don't think Anders Sorensen is going to get the interim tag taken off of them. I think they'll go and make a search. I saw your tweet about it today, and my thoughts, your tweet as well. Like I'm. What about David Carle at Denver? And Denver is the number 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're going for a second straight. They lost in double overtime to Western Michigan in the NCHC championship game. First championship game loss of Zeev Buyem's career, I believe. And so David Carle has been a proven winner. What he doesn't have yet is NHL coaching experience or pro coaching experience, not at the AHL level, not at the NHL level. Does that preclude him from getting one of these jobs? Or do you think an NHL player is going to buy in to what he can do for them?
I do think that he will be able to adjust whenever he feels like it's time to go. Now, Denver has been exceptionally loyal to him too, right? For his story, which, it's been well documented, is that and then in return, he has exceptional loyalty to them. And I think he's very comfortable in his position. But I don't think we're looking at like a guy like, and this is aging me a little bit here, but like Tom Rennie, right? It was like a high end junior coach. He had a little spin at the Olympics and then jumped in as the Canucks coach there. And, some of the players reported that he was just like, he was treating us like we were junior players. Like he was telling a guy like, Dave Babbage that he couldn't have a beer after the game, or putting a curfew on these like 15-year NHL vets, and they just tuned him out immediately. And I don't think we're going to see David Carle do something like that when he does inevitably take over an NHL job. Now, I did tweet that out there, like, may I propose one David Carle for Philadelphia, because everyone's talking about Rick Tocchet, right? Who doesn't have a deal beyond this season with Vancouver. I know the Canucks are desperately want to extend him. They probably should have taken care of that last summer if they really wanted to get it done. Obviously, Tocchet and Philly have a long history together. When he played there, a fan favorite, racked up tons of points. He's a broad street kind of guy. Now, I was told, I did get a text from somebody in the industry who said like they forwarded my tweet over to Carle that I said that. And I was like, I laughed and I was like, oh yeah, what do you have to say? And he's like, oh, David's always got something to say, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. So no indication one way or the other on that one. But I put it out there, but I don't actually think it's like a realistic thing. I think Philadelphia is probably going to go and get a guy like Rick Tocchet, another, dare I say, a retread, someone who's got the NHL experience and someone who's going to be able to be hard on those young kids. Versus, someone like, Chicago, right? You mentioned, or, maybe if David Warsofsky isn't the guy long-term in San Jose, right? Is that more appealing to David Carle to go into like a place like Southern California? You got Max Celebrini, you got Will Smith, you got William Eklund, you got these like super young, talented players. You're going to have another top pick this year, maybe another one in 26. Like with that, like, if I'm him, and I'm speaking completely like out of my own mouth here, not his at all, but if I'm 35 years old and I've got a chance to go to a place like San Jose and work in that organization, and I assume I have the leverage to be like, yeah, give me a 5-year deal at $5 million per. Like, I love you, Denver, and you've been great to me, but I'm probably taking that opportunity whenever it jumps up too. So I do think he's going to have the pick of the litter when he wants to, and I don't think that his lack of pro experience will hinder him getting a job, but it might, have a kind of come into play as he transitions, as he gets his feet under him, and he figures out the pro game, right? And how to handle these guys that are older than he is, right? Coaching guys that are older than you, is always going to be an interesting situation. It's not unique in sport, but it is, I'm sure, a little awkward at times.
Yeah, he's such an interesting coach prospect, because I do think that he is not going to settle for anything that's easy. Or the first, he got talked to teams last year. Wasn't going to jump at the first thing that came along. So I too think like it's probably less about Philly and more about probably like a Chicago place where you need to establish a culture. I think that he can do that. I think that he would get buy-in on that. But I also think that it's going to take something substantial. There are a number of other prospects. We'll spend time maybe in the off season talking about some of these other guys. But there's a lot of real intriguing people in the coaching community out there, and with a new opening such as the Flyers, it does make for a lot of interesting conversation. And we're going to keep that rolling into our Beyond Belief segment, where we will read a statement to each other and we decide whether it's believable or beyond belief. Here's a tough one. This isn't prospect related. It's the exact opposite spectrum of prospect related. But Cam, I'm going to kick us off here. John Tortorella has coached his last game in the NHL.
Beyond belief. No chance. This guy is going to go on the TNT panel for a hot minute. It's going to make for great television, because it always does with Torts. And then some team is going to decide, you know what? I'm not getting the most out of these guys. They need the whip cracked. We need John Tortorella. We need Mike Keenan's, the millennial version of Mike Keenan, right? And he comes in there and he will bust some balls and crack some skulls, and everybody will listen for 6 to 18 months, and then they'll tune him out, and then the cycle continues. No, I don't think we have seen the last of Torts in the NHL. I do think that there is still a market for a coach like him, rightly or wrongly. There will be a team that thinks that, hey, this is the guy that can wake up some of our players that need a wake-up call.
Yeah, I think that he is the ultimate in case of emergency break glass option of a team that needs to get over the hump. My friend Adam Gretz, who I used to work with at CBS Sports, had a great tweet about how, he's probably the right coach to get a 70-point team to 90 points, but he might take a 100-point team to 90 points. So it's like, I was like, that's a pretty good analogy of it from Adam there. And I was like, yeah, but and I've always been a bit of an admirer of Torts in a weird way, I think that it's pretty fascinating. I agree with you. I think it's beyond belief. I think you're gonna have to take the lineup card out of his cold dead hand. So we'll see where that goes. But I turn it back to you, my friend, and with this our next beyond belief question or statement.
Okay. So we're sticking with a theme here, though. David Carle will be coaching his final college games in the NCAA this spring. What do you think?
I think that is accurate. Not because he's in a rush to leave. I just think that there's going to be an opportunity that presents itself. Maybe it's Chicago. Maybe it's a job that we don't know that's open yet. I think that there is a team out there, whether or not, I think for him, it's time to strike. And I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, is that his value is probably never going to get a ton higher. I mean, sure, he could win more national championships, but I think that his value has among NHL offices, because of the lack of experience, because of not having been an assistant or a head coach, the AHL, that I think that the time is now to go get that experience. And I do think that this could be it for him. If he ends up returning to Denver, it wouldn't, it's certainly not the biggest surprise. It just means that the right opportunity to present itself. But there's going to be, I think this is the time is now for him. That's my feeling. So I do believe that this could be it. And maybe he goes out with a national championship. We'll see.
Ooh, wouldn't that be fun? Hey, just another title for Mr. David Carle. That'd be a nice Cinderella story.
Proven winner,
because they're not projected to pull it off this year, right? It's gonna be a tough road for him this time around. Yeah.
But this is also when they play their best too. Historically, even in the Jim Montgomery years, it's kind of amazing how they've always turned it on this time of year. But I've got one for you. We're going to close it out with this one, and it's going to actually lead us into our next topic as well, because I feel like we haven't talked enough about Landon DuPont, and we haven't hyped him up enough. So here's what I'm going to say. You mentioned this name earlier, and I thought it was my thought too. Landon DuPont is the best WHL defenseman, or is, when it's all, let's put it this way. He will go down as the best WHL defenseman since Scott Niedermayer. who won it all, did it all at the WHL level?
I mean, like who's competing with Niedermayer in this position, right? Like Daryl Sador, same kind of generation, racked up those monster seasons in the West. But then we're talking about guys like Olin Zellweger, who, was winning CHL Defender of the Year, Josh Morrissey and Shea Theodore and Ivan Provorov. And these, I think it's a true statement. I think Landon DuPont will be the best defenseman since Scotty Niedermayer to do it in the West. He's that good. He's that good. I have that much faith in this kid not stagnating in year 2 as a 16-year-old or in his draft year. I think he's going to be that level of player. Now, Scotty Niedermayer's NHL career is not one that I would set as the benchmark, because that is as lofty of a goal as you could potentially put for a defenseman. But as a junior age one, yeah, I'll give that a true statement.
Yeah, basically what we're seeing from him is unprecedented. When you see that, you say, okay, well, I have nothing to compare him to. I can't tell you how high this is going to go, because we've never seen anything like it at this point. So I'm with you on that one. I think that is a believable statement, and one that makes sense. And now we're going to really grind it out a little bit here. We're going to really take it to the next level, because these are two guys. They have their teams at the top of the WHL standings. They have been the two most hyped prospects. They're so hyped that we're not even talking about 2025 nearly enough, because, well, quite frankly, these are a little bit more exciting to talk about. So in our final segment, our weekly, you have to pick one. You are starting to build a team. You can choose Landon DuPont or Gavin McKenna. Who do you take?
This kills me. Because, like, for a lot of people, they'd probably be like, this is easy. Take Gavin McKenna, right? Take Gavin McKenna. He's a rock star. And he is. And he's closer to NHL ready. You pretty much know what you're going to get out of him. And it might be like Nikita Kucherov, right? Like, that might be what we're getting out of Gavin McKenna.
Yep.
But he is on the wing, more playmaker than goal scorer. It's easier to find not that type of player, but it's easier to get wingers. You're not going to find a Gavin McKenna in free agency or trade too often. But versus Landon DuPont, right shot defenseman, historic production, supreme athlete. He's only 5'11" now, but he's 15 years old. So we're not expecting him to be a 5'11" defenseman in the NHL. We're expecting him to continue to grow. And maybe he's a 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" inch defenseman on the right side with this mobility and this. I'm gonna say Landon DuPont, and it surprises me, because going into this, I didn't know what I was gonna say, but I'm gonna go with DuPont, even though I gotta wait a little longer, and the risk is there that something happens developmentally where Gav's a lot closer. But I'm gonna do it purely on just how rare it is to find a truly elite right-handed defenseman versus a playmaking winger. What say you?
Yeah, I find it really difficult as well, harder than I thought. And I think that when I came down to it, looking at kind of the totality of the players, I actually do think that of the two, Landon DuPont is the more complete player. He is the more well-rounded player. He is as competitive, if not more so, and can play any way you kind of need him to play. I think that Gavin's he plays the game at 100 miles an hour. He's going to score you a ton of points. He's going to set up a lot of plays. I do think what'll be interesting to see if he does make the jump to college next year, while I do think he'll be among the most productive players, and I think that he'll have tremendous success, there is a challenge that will exist there that doesn't exist for him right now in terms of the physicality and the way that games get gummed up at that level. And we've seen him at the World Juniors where it wasn't amazing. We've seen him at the Hlinka where it wasn't amazing. We did see him last year at the under 18s where it was amazing. And then obviously this year he had just a tremendous season. I think that there is a strong case that normally in my hierarchy, it goes center, D, wing, goalie, like way further back. But center, which is kind of funny because it's such an important position, but just in terms of drafting, center, D, wing, I think in this one, it's close enough for me to say D over center or over winger. So, and maybe Gavin will be a center long term. I don't know. You never know with these players, but he doesn't really have that makeup, I don't think. I think you're getting a little bit more defensive value out of Landon DuPont as well as hopefully you would as a defenseman, but either way.
I hope so.
But man, honestly, like this question, this either or popped into my head at the very last second because we were talking so much about Landon DuPont right before we started recording, and I was like, gosh, I was curious where you were going to go, and I was like, I have a feeling we're going to go in the same direction here for the reasons that we mentioned, but it's pretty incredible when you look at it all. But man, I'll tell you what. So, and any closing thoughts on that that dramatic conclusion to this week's episode of
Yes,
Called Up?
I have a wish. I'm not going to say I have a dream. I have a wish that Maddie Schaefer comes back, gets bounced in the first round off to the U18s. Everett stumbles in round 1, and we get Landon DuPont at the U18s as well. And maybe those boys get to play together. And I think that would just be so much fun. I would love that very, very much. And I think Hockey Canada would like that very, very much as well, too, to get him a look here at the U18s. How do you handle that level of competition? Have a nice start next year. Ooh. Maybe we get to see him at the U20 event next year with this kind of revamped look and the makeup and how they're going to build Team Canada for the World Juniors. Landon DuPont, if he's having himself, if he gets that showing at the U18s, shows he can handle it, and then has a big first half, I am going to be planting my flag on this kid coming to camp. And if he shows out, you get him on that team as a 16-year-old. Mm-hmm. Not since Jay Bowmeister have we seen a 16-year-old defenseman play at this tournament at the under 20s. And I want Landon DuPont to be the next one.
I love it. I love it. I will wait with bated breath to see if that's possible. Well, folks, before we get out of here, I want to give Cam a chance to let you know what's coming up on Elite Prospects.
Oh boy, lots of stuff, right? We got, I say it every week, you got to download the app. It's killer. You know, our feed is really rolling. We just started embedding video into it too. So lots of like quick information and fun little videos. You know, our U23 prospect rankings is out now and organizational rankings. We've got draft meetings. I think we have over 5,000 scouting reports on this already for this draft class. It's insane the work that these guys are doing. So yeah, we got a lot of good stuff coming down the stretch here. U18s, obviously, we're going to be just killing it. But NCAA, our boy Ryan Lambert, their 2-line pass has been covering it really, really well. And so you can get all your coverage for everything hockey there at Elite Prospects these days.
Absolutely. And as a nice complimentary outlet, come on over to FloHockey. We've been doing a lot of world or a lot of NCAA coverage of late. Really, the fun thing right now with the AHL is a lot of those top prospects that did have their seasons end or are having their seasons end will be jumping into AHL lineups, guys that are on reserve lists for the NHL teams and are under contract. A lot of ATOs being signed, so a ton of really high-end prospects. We also have the Swedish Hockey League playoffs, which is in its first round, at least one game every day of the first round. So you'll definitely be able to see some great hockey. There is English commentary. That's for our U.S. subscribers only, but it is a great level of hockey to get more familiar with. So we've got a lot of that coming up. Also, as I mentioned, junior hockey playoffs. A lot of them are going on right now. USPHL national championships, other things like that coming up down the pike. The USHL Clark Cup playoffs, the playoffs of the BCHL, the AJHL, all those leagues that are feeding into the future of the game. You can watch them on FloHockey and certainly follow all of our editorial coverage. We'll be ramping up for the Calder Cup playoffs in the AHL coming up very soon. We will be talking about more of that as we go forward. But boy, it has been a fun day to just watch hockey. It's been a fun day to talk hockey with all of you. Want to send a special thank you to Ever for producing today's show. Huge thanks to everyone that listens. And reminder, please go to Apple Podcasts, go leave a written review, leave a 5-star rating, leave compliments for our physical appearance and the sound of our voices. We like that very much. And we will hopefully continue to keep this thing growing. It's been great to see people continue to listen and join us and talk prospects. And we are going to have so much more NHL draft stuff coming on the way as well. But man, Cam, I think we about covered as much as we possibly could in an hour's time. And I'm really excited to see where things stand. We'll talk a little bit about how the last round of the NCAA playoffs shook out. We'll preview the Frozen Four next week. We'll also be talking NHL draft and so much more. But Cam, I hope you have a great rest of your week and enjoy that tournament, pal.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, it should be fun. We'll see you next week.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks a lot for joining us on this week's edition of Called Up the Prospects podcast. A special thanks to Wonderful Pistachios for being our presenting sponsor, and also to everyone that makes this thing possible at FloHockey, at Elite Prospects, and all of you. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Called Up. I'm Chris Peters for Cam Robinson. We'll see you next time.